How's that, huh? Little beatboxing over the wait and see. We're going to show up here any minute. That's a new wrinkle tonight, folks. Great Tuesday evening to everyone. Welcome to another episode of I Didn't Know That, a little podcast that we do each and every Tuesday night to give you information that you didn't know that'll enrich your life in about an hour. We hope, or that's the plan anyway. I am Karaoke Bob tonight, joined by Jared Gray, the wine professor, as my regular co-host. Mike Stouffer, as they say in the news industry, is on assignment and will be back next Tuesday evening. Also going to be joined tonight by Michael Bonanno from Too Late for Autographs, and we're gonna hit some more Ohioans of note. And if you're a music fan like I am, you're not going to want to miss any of that. So without further ado, let's welcome my new co-host, Jared Gray.
Hey everyone, how's it going this evening?
From Home Buys in Canton, who always gives us great wine tips.
You're practicing for that air guitar?
Yeah, I think
competition?
So. I think so.
Is that what that was?
I was spurred on by Lieutenant Face Melter sent me an email wondering where in the hell was my audition. So Big Dave's here. Let's say hi to Big Dave.
Hey, Big Dave, how are you doing?
So yeah, we're without the real genius of the program.
Yeah, he's the guy behind the scenes, but we're just gonna have to muddle through this tonight, Bob, and we'll do what we can.
He's like the smart guy behind the scenes. I appear smart. I appear to know a lot of things, but I talk a good game. I'm like a politician. And then Mike's a guy that I'd have in my cabinet to help solve all the problems I created with my campaign.
Do all the dirty work.
Do all the dirty work.
All the behind the scenes dirty work.
Right. Like, well, you promised everybody this, Bob. It's going to be tough to do, but this is how we're going to have to do it. I'm like, oh, should have talked to you beforehand. So
I see you're enjoying some wine.
I am tonight because I felt that this was the best thing that the drive-thru had to offer. Because it was about an hour before the show. I'm like, oh man, I don't have any wine, and I can't not do a show with the wine professor and not have any wine on hand. So I went.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I went to Cheers. Good to see you. So I went to. There's a brand new drive-thru right down the street from me, which is so great. I don't have to get out of the car. The guy that runs it's super nice and has a pretty decent, drive-through wine selection. I mean, he's got, all the Behringer stuff, the Dark Horse stuff, the Apothecms, the, all your standards.
Brand name stuff. Okay.
19 Crimes. You know what I did get is I did buy another bottle of that Snoop Dogg Rosé. Just because
you enjoyed it last week, didn't you?
It was so... it just takes no effort to enjoy. See,
when I first came on, I told you got to cut the reds in the summertime with the ice cubes and go to the rosés. So I think you're going to do that this year, aren't you?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna chill up that Snoop Dogg Rosé because again, I'm not going to because the problem is like for instance, on Saturday and Sunday, also interesting story. So. I needed a couple of big pine trees taken out in my yard. Actually, 2 of them aren't even on my property. I just had these nightmares that these trees were going to come down and fall on my garage. So my neighbor's my cousin. And I go over to him and I say, hey man, what can we do about these trees? And, it's like we all just work for ourselves. Nobody has a boss. We're all just like little small businesses. And COVID was pretty rough on him. So I said, look, I'll try and find some reasonable way to get that tree out. He's like, awesome. So, yes, Snoop Dogg Rosé, Renee. Absolutely. She says, hi, let's get some highs in before I, go off on this tangent that hopefully everybody will enjoy. Hello, Helena.
Yelena's here.
Yep. Good to see Yelena's here. And,
yep.
And then we said hi to Big Dave. Okay, good.
All right, very good.
So,
what's it like with your cousin next door? Is that good?
Yeah,
bad?
It's terrific, and that's why hopefully neither one of us will ever move, because on one side, like behind me, is a tree line that has giant electrical poles that will never be developed. Fingers crossed. This was all old family farm at one point. So I grew up on this piece of land about 5 houses down, and now I live in like the second house that was on the piece of property. So anyhow, I go up to buy some wine at the corner, and I notice this old like Dodge pickup truck, 1995, most of it's rust, but it has in like, you know, those orange stickers that you put on by yourself, just one letter at a time, says professional tree service. And I just got a quote to take those trees out, a couple other things. It's like in the thousands of dollars range.
Wow.
So I'm like, this guy's at the bar next door. This is Sunday afternoon. And I go in, and I caught him at a disadvantage. I mean, it was Sunday afternoon, but he probably started around breakfast. And he's like, you got your guy. Like, look, I'm the tree man. He like pulls down his shirt. He's got a tattoo that says the tree man on it. Gives me his card. I'll come out. I'll take a look. I'm like, I have a really good feeling that this is my guy. And so he comes out. He comes out on like Friday and starts taking pictures, and I'm like working. And he's like, are these the ones you want out? And he's like, I'll take them out, $425. I'm like, deal. I'll see you whenever you can come. So he shows up on Saturday with another guy. And man, this guy was a maestro with a chainsaw. He's like, you're not going to have to move your van. Like my neighbors had cars like parked all the way around, just with like,
awesome.
Like nip here, tuck there, wait for the branch to kind of bend and fall where he wanted to go. And then he'd take it off. It'd fall. He'd climb up some more, climb it all. And then he'd get to the top, and then he'd start, once he got all the branches off at the top, then he'd cut off the top, let it fall, and then take another piece and let it fall. And so after moving trees for 3 days, I got a little gulpy with the rosé. So I don't feel bad getting gulpy on a cheap rosé. It was great. No. Say hello to Lori Evans is here.
Hey, Lori, how we doing?
Good to have everybody here. So I think that's enough. Any good wine stories from you over the weekend there, Jared?
No, it's a pretty slow weekend. Just had the weekend off. The wife and I sat around and didn't really do much. She had a medical appointment, so we just kind of took it easy this week, and we're going to do the same this weekend. Very good. Well, Nick, I'm sure you'll have some good wines that you'll have around, and you'll share that with everybody. For sure. Here in a little bit. Well, tonight's really exciting because Mike Bonanno is here with us again from Too Late for Autographs. And tonight's focus is definitely Ohioans that have made their mark one way or another in the music industry. Either they were DJs, they ran a famous record store, or they went on to write songs that you and I sing in the shower all the time. And hopefully there's no open microphones around when that happens. So let's bring Mike on and say hello to Mike Bonanno. Good to see you, Mike.
Hey guys.
Hey,
Thanks
Mike.
for having me back. Hi.
Yeah,
good to see you.
Good to see you. We love talking to you because we learn about these are. We're going to go through this list, and there's going to be some names that people don't know that they're familiar with what they did, and there's going to be some names that they do know that they didn't realize came from Ohio, and in some cases, real close to home here, Cleveland, Akron, Kent areas. So, and starting with, we want to start with Alan.
Sure, that's a good place to start. That's the real good place.
It's this guy that we call this is the reason why WONE is the home of rock and roll in Akron, and I'll touch on that after you talk about, of course, the legend Alan Freed.
Right, there you go. He first of all, he's buried in Lakeview Cemetery in Cleveland. He was originally buried. His ashes were at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for a number of years, in a undisclosed location. So they moved him to Lakeview a few years ago. They had a ceremony in 2016. That gravestone right, that marker is a jukebox. I don't know how well it can be seen, but on the back of it is a jukebox. And then on the front is just his picture with a long description of what he did. And he's the one that, a lot of people give him credit for coining the term rock and roll. That can be debated and argued. We'll get to another guy later that is also credited with coining that term, that worked with Alan Freed, a guy named Leo Mintz. But Alan had a DJ show on WJW in Cleveland, and he was called the Moondog. And if anybody from Cleveland would know the Moondog Coronation Ball at 105.7 used to put on every year. It's kind of was in his honor. So he started playing the rhythm and blues music of the black artists, and it caught on real quick with a lot of the white kids, younger white kids. He ended up hosting the first, or actually organizing the first rock and roll concert ever in Cleveland. Ever at the old arena. And actually, it was only a few songs in, and they canceled because there were so many people waiting outside to get in, and the fire marshal was there, and they were already over capacity, and they shut it down real quick. But it was the first rock and roll concert ever. People, when they were, I don't know if you remember, Bob, when they were getting the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, trying to get it here, there was a big push by San Francisco to get it, and New York, and Cleveland is really the roots. Alan Freed was the roots of rock and roll, and he's the one that started this whole thing.
And even, they were in the bag for New York City. The committee was in the bag for New York City. And, and I read a really good article. I'm trying to remember the people from like Atlantic Records that went into the people from Cleveland. And there were New Yorkers that were like, wait, you really need to hear the guys from Cleveland out. And like Ahmet Erkin, who was really from Atlantic Records, who was, a visionary pioneer record guy, that really kind of, did the push. I was, somehow I ended up being on Public Square at one of the big rallies to try and get the Rock Hall in Cleveland before it got built. And I was probably in 7th or 8th grade. And we ended up there like after a Cleveland field trip. And like we all ended up on television. It was just the craziest thing. But because Alan was at WJW in Cleveland when that phrase was quote unquote coined. I worked at WAKR, which Alan was at WAKR, which is in Akron prior to going to Cleveland. I think he went to Pittsburgh. He went to somewhere in Pennsylvania and then came back to Cleveland. But there's legend has it that he actually coined the phrase rock and roll while he was at WAKR. But after it became such a big thing, he left AKR in a bad contract dispute, and he never wanted to give that radio station the credit for being where he was when he coined the phrase rock and roll. So
that's an interesting story.
So that's why. So the owner of AKR also owns 97.5 WONE, and they call that the home of rock and roll because. And when I worked there, in the basement of that facility, which it's been. The station has moved many, many times over the years, but I can tell you the last time that I was there, the AKR 45s catalog is in the basement. And it's very well could be that there's some records down there that Alan Freed had his hands on. Wow. And it's really, it was cool. I'd go down there and just hang out and go through the really old 45 records. So it's
a lot of history there.
A lot of history. So we're moving on to Leo, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, actually, because he worked with Freed in Cleveland.
Yeah, that's the next stop. So let's talk about Leo and Revolution Records or Record Rendezvous. Yeah.
Record Rendezvous, right? He's the guy on the bottom there. We'll talk about the other Leo above him a little bit, but Leo Mintz owned a record store, Record Rendezvous, on Prospect Avenue in Cleveland. He's the one. He started his business. He would go to a jukebox dealer in Columbus and pick up all these old 45s. And he'd bring them back to his record store, and he would let his customers listen to them before they paid for them, make sure there were no scratches on them, or just to see if they liked them. He had these little booths set up, and they would just go and listen to them. And he noticed that more and more of the white kids were coming in listening to this. So then he hooked up with Alan Freed, and he suggested to Freed that he play these songs on his Moondog show. And actually, the story you just told me about the phrase rock and roll starting in Akron, Leo Mintz is often, his own son actually wrote an open letter to anybody who wanted to read it, that his father actually coined the term rock and roll. There was one night when Alan Freed was on the radio and Leo Mintz was there, and Freed turned to Mintz and said, "This is really great stuff. We have to come up with a name for it." And Mintz said to Freed, "Well, you're really rolling tonight. You're rocking and rolling. Why don't you just call it rock and roll?" That's the story that is about Leo Mintz and coining the term rock and roll. So
interesting.
Yeah.
So, but there's no debating that rock and roll was coined here.
Yeah.
In this area.
The third argument is that a lot of these black artists, rhythm and blues artists, were using that phrase in their songs for decades.
Yeah, and it
going
was
back to the 20s and 30s.
and it was a phrase about sex. It was about
You're right.
It was about having you're rocking and rolling in the bedroom.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly right. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, Leo Mintz
Absolutely.
and Alan Freed, like you said, they started that in Cleveland. Really.
Yeah, they did. All right, let's go to Leo on the top.
Leo, he's another pioneer here with rhythm and blues. He owned a place called Leo's Casino down on Euclid Avenue in Cleveland. And he's the one that got a lot of black artists their start. Some of them are listed there. Diana Ross, Smokey Robinson. He even had some comedians there, Red Fox, Richard Pryor. But he had a lot of the black artists come through there. And a lot of them got noticed there. He was really responsible for that. Right before he died, they dedicated the site, an historical site. There's actually an Aldi shopping center there now, unfortunately. But they put up a plaque, and then somebody stole the plaque, unfortunately. But he was really,
can't have nice things.
Yeah, exactly. But he was really responsible for getting a lot of the black artists into Cleveland and getting noticed. So he played a big role in that.
And then let's go to what's interesting about playing in a tribute band is you start to feel like you play these songs so much, and you kind of make this relationship with the band in kind of a metaphysical way, and sometimes in a very real way. And so this one kind of touches a little close to home because Ben was Orjaleski.
Yeah, they used to call him Ben 11 Letters in high school.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so go ahead and give us a little bit on Ben Orr, and then I'll give you a little on Ben Orr.
Okay. Well, he actually met Rick Ocasek in Cleveland. As Rick Ocasek was living in Cleveland with his parents. Rick actually graduated from Maple Heights High School.
That's right.
And so they met here. They were in Michigan for a while. They were in Columbus for a while. They finally moved to Boston, and that's where they finally formed the Cars, and that's when they got going when they were in Boston. But they started way back in Cleveland when they were quite young, actually. So it's all again rooted in Cleveland. The sound started here.
Yeah, Ben was in a band called the Grasshoppers, and they were the house band for Downbeat, which was basically Cleveland's American Bandstand. And it I think they syndicated a little bit. Don Webster was the host,
right?
And the Grasshoppers were the house band, so they would play the songs. They would play songs in and out of breaks and that sort of thing. So Ben went to Valley Forge High School,
right? Exactly.
And there was a book written by a guy by the name of Joe Milliken called Let's Go, and it was about Ben's life. And he talks about has met a lot of people, including a couple of Ben's ex-wives, which we had played an event here in Cleveland, and then we went to Boston and played another book signing event there. I'm in a Cars tribute band, so I play the part of Elliot Easton. I get to play all the cool guitar parts. But there were Ben's one of Ben's ex-girlfriends, his ex-wife that helped him, that wrote all the lyrics to the Lace album that he had she was there. And David Robinson, the drummer for the Cars, was there, and that's him posing with all of us.
Wow.
So there's me on the left, and there's there's our Ben Orr, and then David, and then our Rick Ocasek there, then our Greg Robinson, and our Greg Hawkes, and then David Robinson. So
that's really cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. So we feel pretty tied in with that music and the history of that band, and then what I'm trying to remember the name of the band that they had before the Cars that they had in Columbus, Milkwind, or
they had a few of them.
Yeah, and
a
Captain something. I can't remember right now. All right, so moving along to Sonny Geraci. Is that right?
Sonny Geraci. Yeah, are you familiar with him at all?
No, not much. I mean, I know who the Outsiders and Climax is.
Yeah, that's where he got famous. Was first with the Outsiders, and they did that song "Time Won't Let Me," and then he went over to did Climax, and they did "Precious and Few." He was really big. He's kind of like Michael Stanley. He was real big right here in Cleveland and in a little bit of Ohio, but he never really broke out big. I heard a story, he was at one of the Moondog shows and I went and saw him live. And when he was on stage, he was saying that he was offered the song Rock and Roll Heaven that the Righteous Brothers ended up doing. And for some reason, he never got to do it and somehow ended up with the Righteous Brothers. But he would kind of was mad about that because that probably would have made him big. That would have gave him his name. But he was a Clevelander and he did a lot for the area here and he performed a lot around here. And he did those two big songs. And I'm sure, the people that are watching the show know those two songs if they heard them.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So.
Time won't let me run out.
Right. That's it.
Facebook, don't shut us down for singing copyrighted materials. No.
Right.
Precious and few are the moments we don't get shut down.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And so, we had one pioneer of the New Age movement in the late 80s. Let's go to the next one. There's Bob Cassell.
Yeah. Bob 2 in the band.
Bob 2.
Yeah. He, and I don't know how much you know about him, Bob, but he was really more of the engineering and production part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And after Devo broke up, he was actually went on and worked with others. He worked with Andy Summers. Is that his name, from the Police?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He did an album for him. And he did a lot of TV and movie work. He did Happy Gilmore, the production music for that, and a Rugrats TV show or movie or something.
He did that with Mark Mothersbaugh.
Okay, yeah, there you go. Right.
Because Mark Mothersbaugh was who's the singer in Devo, and yeah, we haven't mentioned that he's from Devo, but I think you can tell from the outfit that is where he's did. And very recently, I went on a kind of a Devo rabbit hole, and I knew the hits, but hadn't really gone into like listening to whole entire albums. And when that music came out, it had to just hit people upside the head, like, what the hell is this? And it was so innovative for the time, but yet had so much complexity to it. And it was really like Devo was short for de-evolution, because they really looked at what was happening in the 70s was a de-evolution of humanity. And they were really activists, and they all met up at Kent State and were around. They were there when
Jerry
the
was
shootings
there.
happened in 1970, and that affected them tremendously. It played a real big part in the formation of Devo. And if you guys haven't really, anybody that really likes music from the 80s or just really likes well done music, I encourage you all to like get on Spotify and throw yourself into Devo for a couple of days. You won't be disappointed. It's really fun stuff. Their cover of I Can't Get No Satisfaction from Rolling Stones is just it's really cool. It's really cool. Yeah,
it really was. And this is a side note, when Bob's brother Jerry was at Kent State and he witnessed those shootings, and like you said, that started a de-evolution thought in his mind. And also, who was there was Chrissie Hynde from The Pretender.
Mm-hmm.
She was in the crowd that day too.
And before there was the big, there was when record companies would go to a town and just start signing a bunch of bands because of a certain sound. In the late 70s, record companies were coming to Akron for the Akron sound. When they were signing the Rubber City Rebels, they were signing the Pretenders, they were signing Devo. Like that was the big thing. Like Akron was like the first Seattle and really defined the sound of what came out. Because you think about the first Devo album and the first Cars album, they both came out in 1977, 1978, and really kind of defined how pop music came out of disco. Because you think about what was happening in 1978, it was disco. It was not new wave. Yeah. That was just it was new wave and punk that really kind of got it out of it. And the new wave, you could trace its roots right here between the Cars and Devo.
Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely. You even had Kiss doing a disco album or disco song at one time.
And what's interesting is that that song was probably the first Kiss song I became aware of as a young child.
Oh, really?
And I was Made for Loving You, and that was off the Dynasty album, which is still one of my favorites. But when you've got and Desmond Child, who wrote "Living on a Prayer" and a bunch of other songs that you'll know, wrote that song with Paul Stanley, and I mean I love that song, and that kind of started my first fascination with Kiss, and then like seeing them on television, the makeup, and I'm like 4 years old, I'm like, that's freaking scary, but I love it for some reason, and so then by the time I got my hands on some of that older Kiss stuff and on 8-track, that kind of started my thing. So last but not least, let's go to William Powell.
Well, that's a guy right by you. He's from Canton. William Powell from the OJs from Canton. He's buried in Canton, and even on his gravestone over there it says "member of the OJs." He defined their sound really. He died in 1977. The band had been around for, I think they formed 69 or maybe even before 69 really. But he was there for Backstabbers and Love Train and a couple other songs that they did that were real popular before he passed away in 77. And he really gave them their sound, and it's too bad that he couldn't have shared in their success. He was really good at what he did. Great musician.
And they were just so funky.
Yeah.
Just an amazing funk and R&B band. I'm trying to think, you had the OJs, you had the Ohio Players, you had a lot of that sound kind of came in between, Detroit was more Motown, but as you got more into Ohio, then it became, became a little more funky. Where was George Clinton from? I don't know. I don't know who I'm asking. I'm looking at a big white pipe I'm just talking to. So great stuff as always, Michael. Really appreciate you dropping by again. This one was, as you could tell, was really pretty cool. Professor, you have any questions for Mike?
I actually have a couple questions for Michael if he would stick around for a minute.
Hopefully I have an answer.
So yeah, hopefully you do. So I noticed looking at these guys, most of them died pretty young.
Yes.
Do you get into that aspect of how they died, or are you just researching their fame? Well, so what's your process with that?
Yeah, it's I try to cover all of their life from the beginning, how, even if they were from somewhere else and they got here, and how they got famous, and then how they passed away. Like William Powell from cancer. He passed away from cancer.
Oh.
He was very young.
In his 30s, right?
Yeah, he was very young. And even Bob Cassell from Diva was, I think, in his early 50s or something. He wasn't that old, really.
None of them look too old, really.
No, they're not.
Ben died of.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Ben died of pancreatic cancer, and his last interview with the Cars was in 1999, and he looked so small and so frail. He was wearing a Cleveland Browns 99 jersey because he was so excited the Cleveland Browns were coming back.
Did you see his I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you. Did you see his recording with Michael Stanley on Here We Go Again?
No. Oh, yes.
That was right before he passed too.
That's right. Yeah. And that was a benefit record.
Right.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely.
I'm sorry. So Jared had another question. I don't know.
Yeah. No, so I wasn't as familiar with, I mean, as Bob and you guys were talking about these guys, I became a little bit more familiar with, what they had done, some of the bands. But I wasn't as familiar with these guys as, I'm a big history buff. And when I think of what the project that you do, I'm kind of looking even further back in time. So I actually kind of had a couple questions about how you go about your project that you do. So do you go to, like, let's say one cemetery and you find everybody in that one cemetery and you study them, or do you grab it by topic, say, music or acting, and then go find these people? What's your process, or is there no process?
Actually, how I got started was some of these people that are watching might be familiar. There's a site called Find a Grave.
Yes, okay, I know that one. Yeah.
If you go to that site, they list famous people by state that are buried there.
Okay.
So you go to Ohio, and it'll list. There's like 1,500 famous people buried in Ohio. Well, notable. It depends on what would you want to define famous as. But there's 1,500 grave sites of notable famous people in Ohio. and then they can break it down into cemeteries for you if you want to do it. So like Lakeview Cemetery in Cleveland, there's
Mhm.
I've gotten 60 some grave sites from that cemetery alone. And I've been back
Okay.
there 3 or 4 times. I don't find out about some of them till later.
Okay.
Like Nate Thurman, who played for the Cavs. I don't know if anybody's a sports fan, but he was a basketball player, played for the Cavs. He just passed away a few years ago. He's buried in Lakeview Cemetery. Michael Stanley,
Okay.
who just passed away, he's buried in Lakeview Cemetery. So I got to go back and get him. But
Okay.
if you go to this Find a Grave, that's where I get most of it from. And then
Okay.
people, now that they know I do this, they tell me they've heard of people, that they know of, and so I'll go to that their grave site and find them. Word of mouth a
Oh,
little
okay.
bit now. So, but it's mostly just researching people online. Again through Find a Grave mostly.
So you try to get as many people in one place as possible, right?
Yeah. Now, like I was in Cincinnati about 6 years ago, and since then I found more grave sites. Spring Grove Cemetery in Cincinnati is the second largest cemetery in the country. So the more people are now, I got to go back again. I could probably get
Oh,
5 or 6 more. So as time goes on, people pass. So, but yeah, you just find them online really more than anything.
Okay.
I probably couldn't do this without the internet. I know I couldn't do this
Okay.
without the internet. So that's
And
my
one
source.
one last question for you. So you've been to all these cemeteries all over the state, right? Big
Yeah.
ones, small ones,
Yep.
little towns, big cities,
Yep.
medium-sized cities. If you can recall, maybe one or two, what is the creepiest cemeteries that you have been to? If you can recall. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I'd be kind of interested to see what your take on that is.
You know what? There's a Lakeview Cemetery again. I just mentioned it, but I was there by myself one day, and it was getting kind of towards dusk. And I'm walking around. There weren't a lot of people there, and it's starting to get a little dark. And they're going to close the cemetery soon. And I just got a really weird feeling. It was just like,
Oh,
I mean, I didn't see any ghosts or any orbs or anything, but it just
Weird
got a weird
feeling.
feeling. And I just felt like, you know what? I think I got to go. It was just
Wait,
really strange.
whose wind chimes just went off during this response?
mine.
See, there you go.
That's crazy.
Any other ones that you can think of?
Now that was about people. I've seen people post pictures of cemetery with these orbs or these ghosts or these white little whatever. I've never experienced anything paranormal in a cemetery. I've been to over 100 cemeteries, 102 to be exact. In the 6 years I've been doing this all over Ohio, and I've never experienced anything paranormal. So maybe because I really don't believe in it. So maybe that's part of it. But there's, nothing's really ever happened to me that I've thought was strange and scary. Sorry, I know that's boring.
No, that's all right. That's all right. Well, thank you for having or coming on the show and
Absolutely.
talking about all those musicians. I'm sure Bob was very, very fascinated and loved the conversation. So thank you very much. And Bob enjoyed himself, I can tell.
I did. I mean, you're hitting my wheelhouse here. They're just throwing a big softball and just sit back and.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, and July 25th at the Music Box in Cleveland on the shores of the Crooked River. Sunday brunch with Moving in Stereo, which is a Ben Orr sung song. That's my tribute band, and we'll be playing Sunday brunch up there. So,
oh, cool! I'll have to check it out.
So everybody's invited to come hang out and check out the band. And that's Ben saying, "Get up there." And that and I'll tell you something, Michael, something I didn't understand and I don't know that other Cars tribute bands in this area that are around the country, and there are a few that miss this point that we get now. Is that these songs and this music's really super important to people around here because they knew Ben and they loved Ben. And there's this one lady, Diane, who was Ben's best friend growing up, and she has never missed a show since she first saw us. Anytime that we're around here, she doesn't miss a show. She comes out and she brings her photo books of her and Ben as kids and sits around and tells stories. And like her granddaughter is like our biggest fan. And it really kind of changes our approach to how we approach playing these songs and how we approach being a band about it. Is that we really feel like we're keeping these songs alive for people, because now the Cars will never perform again.
Right.
And with Rick and Ben both being gone, and we're really the only, we're us and other Cars bands around the country. We're really the ones that are kind of giving that live experience of what it felt like to hear these songs kind of played and interpreted live. And I think we do a really good job, even though somehow we still sound like us. But but I will say that one thing that I think that we do have over other ones is that Danny Aiella, who is our Rick Ocasek, and Matt Fuller, that's our Ben Orr. I think both of those guys do a great job vocally of making you think that you're listening to those guys. They just have, how their voices operate kind of innately, are both live in those areas. And that's one thing that I think that sets us apart, is that vocally we can get really close, where other ones, it kind of sounds like cartoons.
That's great. I'm glad you guys do that. That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's a lot of fun. So a little shameless self-promotion there, guys. So hope to see all you guys. Hope to see you guys on July 25th in the morning. In the morning. It's a Sunday. And the food is amazing at the Music Box. It's really good. Really cool venue if you've not been up there. We'll be upstairs.
Are there mimosas?
Yeah, right.
The mimosas are also pretty banging. In fact, you're hard pressed to detect the hint of orange juice that's in the mimosas at the Sunday brunches. So
I'll have the sparkling and hold the orange juice. Right.
Big Dave says, thanks, Mike. Before we go, we have a couple. Pamela Martin says, hi, Mike. And then there was somebody else that said, yo, Mike, I wanted to make sure that it was a name that I wasn't familiar with. Oh, I think it was Josh. I didn't see there. Yeah.
Another Martin.
Yeah. Cheryl Martin says, yo, Michael.
Okay.
So, once again, everybody was really happy to see that you're here. And Kim McBride, we had you at Mimosas. Well, thanks, Michael. We will be sure to see you again soon.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that was great. That was very interesting. I learned a lot of things that I did not know. And there, you gave a lot of great information. I didn't even realize the Akron connection.
Oh, yeah. Akron was, like I said, it was kind of the Seattle of the late 70s. And I'm trying to think, the Dead Boys, the Hammer Damage, the Rubber City Rebels got signed. And that was kind of a big deal. But I mean, obviously Devo and the Pretenders were the big ones that made the biggest hits. There's a really good Pretenders tribute out of Nashville that's really, really good that we've played with a couple of times. So there's that. So now, look at this. We've got just more new innovations all the time, up to and including our new Wine of the Week. And, talking about disco, maybe we should play this, have a little disco while we're talking about the Wine of the Week.
Sounds good.
How about that?
Yes.
So what do you have for us coming up this week? Where is that? And
did you get the picture?
Well, now
possibly.
Let's see. I thought I did show graphic. Wine of the Week slide. Wait, I do. It is going to. Is that the one? Hang on. I think let's see. Is this it? There it is. Let me. How about that as a? Oh no, it's in there. I just didn't upload it, I guess.
Kim is asking, while you're looking for pictures, if we ever found her picture from when she visited me at the store a couple weeks back. Did you ever find that?
I didn't know that. I never had possession of that, so that just verifies that we have it. I never had actual possession of that, so no.
Okay.
So somebody else had possession of that. Maybe Deirdre had it.
I gave it to Mark.
You gave it to Mark.
And Mark was supposed to give it to Mike. But maybe I'll talk about the wine. And then maybe I'll see if I can send you the picture and email and you can shoot it up real quick. How's that, Kim?
I love shooting up. No.
Family show.
Family show. All right. So here we go. Let's go to that wine of the week. Jared, take it away.
Absolutely. So this week, for our wine of the week, we have Riebeek Cellars. It's a merlot. This is $9.99. You can find it at Home Buys. You might find it at Krieger's. Have you ever been up to Krieger's?
I have been up to Krieger's. Krieger's not Fresh Markets. What's their byline? I made so many Krieger's radio commercials in my career, I can't even tell you.
That might be a place that has it. I know this distributor works with them a lot. Okay. But so it's $9.99. You can find it at Home Buys. You might find it at Krieger's. There might be some independent places that would carry this. But this is an everyday wine. It comes from Swartland region in South Africa. And if you see the map right there, that largest region that's kind of a dark salmon color on the left side is called Swartland.
Is that coral or salmon? It's kind of somewhere between coral and salmon.
Yeah. So that's the region this wine comes from. Now, the reason why I chose this wine from South Africa is so Merlot kind of gets a bad rap. Usually here, especially, it kind of does. It's starting to make a comeback. But
I love a nice Merlot.
Good. Well, hopefully you'll like this one. Mm-hmm. But so when you think of Merlot, especially here in Ohio or the Midwest, we kind of think of California Merlot. Even though Merlot is grown all over the world, and it comes in many different styles and tastes, we usually think of California. So I wanted to kind of show something, a mainstream grape, but from a different region. So that's why we're doing South Africa. And this one here in particular is medium-bodied. It has a lot of red berry fruits to it, hints of oak and herbs. The tannins are supple on it, which gives it a silky finish. So this, if you like an old world wine, this would be fine on its own. If you're more of a new world wine, you like a little more fruit forwardness, I would pair this with something, and my pairing would be a lamb burger. I don't know if you've ever had a lamb burger before.
I have had a lamb burger. There was a bar up the street from me that made an amazing lamb burger, and then it's closed. It's opened and closed under various names, 3 or 4 different times, and the lamb burger, unfortunately, has gone.
So South African wine, it is considered New World wine, and in general, I think we've touched on this before. New World wine, even if it's dry, tends to be a little more fruit forward. This actually, because I think of the soil in South Africa. And maybe being somehow, connected with the European continent, that it has a little bit different type soil. And it shows more of an old world style, even though technically it's New World. People debate, is it New World? Is it Old World? I would say from a taste standpoint, it's mostly Old World. So it's going to be a little earthier. You're going to taste that oak, taste the herbs and spices, depending on the grape. Yeah. And they do a lot of French grapes. So you're going to see a lot of Syrah, which they will usually call Shiraz, just like Australia does. I think they're kind of playing off of that name with the popularity.
Wait, so Shiraz and Syrah are the same grape?
Are the same grape, yes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So Syrah, which you would find in the southern portion of France, is grown all over the world. We call it Syrah. They call it Syrah in Washington State. They call it Syrah in, just about anywhere else that grows Syrah except for Australia and South Africa. And even sometimes New Zealand will go back and forth, but mostly Shiraz.
Why don't they make up their mind? I mean, it's the same grape. Who decided they were going to throw a monkey wrench in the works and decide to call it Shiraz?
The Australians. They had too much. They were cooking on the Barbie, and decided that that's what they were going to call it. Right?
That's what they do. They're Australians. There's always shrimp on the Barbie, and there's always a glass of Shiraz.
That's right.
So maybe that's why that's how they if there's a run on Syrah, they knew that people would leave the Shiraz alone.
There you go. More for them.
More for them. That's right.
More
I was going to ask you, but I think you pretty much covered it. Like, well, why do you think Merlot gets such a bad rap? I've never heard that. I enjoy Merlots as kind of more of a, again, to me, it's a very easy drinking red.
So if you go to any wine shop here in the area, and I've been in the business for about 12 years, I have slowly seen the Merlot section shrink. And you're going to find a Merlot section. Everything in there is going to be from California or Washington State. And it's just kind of shrinking. I mean, they still grow Merlot all over the world. It's being used for a lot of blending. And I think, and unfortunately, there was a movie that came out with Paul Giamatti about...
Right. Was it Sideways?
Sideways. I don't know. How long ago was that? It's probably almost 20 years at this point, right?
I had a bunch of people, because I was drinking a lot of wine back then, like, oh, you gotta watch Sideways. And so I watched Sideways, and I was asleep like 45 minutes in. I'm like, where's this going? And maybe it was because I felt like I needed to drink wine while I was watching Sideways that aided, but like, I can't tell, like, in that 45 minutes, I can't tell you anything that movie was about. I still don't know. There
was some love story thing.
Of course there was a love story.
Yeah.
You know what wine does.
Yeah.
I've made some pretty questionable decisions drinking a lot of wine.
There was a scene in that movie where he kind of jabbed at Merlot, and it actually did kind of create a wave in the wine industry and kind of hurt the grape as a single varietal or a single category.
Wow. We're so dumb.
I hear a lot. I don't like Merlot.
Why? Because you saw it on Sideways? Why don't you get your own opinion? For crying out, you pay attention to a movie. Who does that?
I have heard I don't like Merlot a lot. It's a popular I guess complaint, but Merlots are great. They're grown all over the world. My favorite Merlots come from actually Chile or South Africa. I really like Chilean and South African Merlots. I think they've got a little bit more character to them. Not that there aren't great ones from California, but that's where I like them from. So that's why I chose this Riebeek Cellars Merlot for you. I have it at my store. I'm getting some more in tomorrow. So $9.99. And if you're into cooking, I think a lamb burger would be great. If you're not into the lamb, just a regular burger or veal, which is kind of hit or miss there too. But I think those would be three great pairings: lamb burger, just a regular burger, or veal.
Well, let's go to the comments. First, let's say hi to last week's guest, Greg Nicholas. Good to see Greg. And then, of course, Kim is K. Sarah on the Shiraz Sarah. And then Renee asks, Mr. Wine Professor, need a good white wine with a red wine emoji that pairs well with seafood. Now, first, Renee, I want to, because I'm going to try and maybe help out here a little bit, or at least I'll help the wine professor, because I'm not going to be able to help you with the wine. But when you say seafood, are you talking about like shellfish, your shrimps, your scallops, your lobsters? Are you talking like a nice piece of salmon, which is, or some swordfish, something that's a little richer? Because let's say that I'll give you those two options, and let's pick a white for both there, Jared.
Okay. Well, I would say if you're going to do something richer, like lobster, on the shellfish side, especially with the butter, you got to go with a Chardonnay. An oaked Chardonnay that's been mallowed or surly stirred makes it creamy. It just pairs really, really well. So that would be a great pairing. Go ahead.
Make sure to get 2 bottles, so that way if somebody's around, you don't feel like you have to be shellfish. You can share, and there's plenty of wine left over. And so if you're going with more of a fillet type fish.
Chardonnays are great with those as well.
Mm-hmm.
I would say if you're doing like clams or oysters or any of the other shellfish that doesn't require or go well with like that butter kind of element like a lobster would, definitely go with an unoaked white that's got a lot of nice bright acidity. You could do something like a Sauvignon Blanc. Some Pinot Grigios go very well, and I like to do kind of alternative whites. Like I think we've done on the show a Verdejo before. I think that'd go well. Albareno from Spain would go well. So I like those nice, crisp, full-bodied whites that are unoaked, and they go great with shellfish or, medium to light-bodied fish. So those would be great pairings. And you can come in, see me, and I'll show you some of those wines. I have a couple that I'd, show to you, and I think they pair great. And
they're not durfy. So that's good. We don't want...
We don't want any durf in our fish.
I even forgot what durfy meant. Such a silly word. I love it. So, well, Renee says she's coming to see it. So
sounds good.
That's what we want, because you'll leave with some good recommendations. So while the disco playeth in the background, Professor, what did you learn tonight?
I really am, amazed and that I learned about this Northeast Ohio, Akron, Cleveland connection with the rock and roll. I had heard some of these things about how we invented rock and roll, and I finally heard the story. So that's what I learned this evening. How about you, Bob?
I learned that people need to make up their own minds. Don't listen to movies or the things that you see or read. I mean, have it factor into your opinion, but gosh, go out and have an experience, and don't let people influence. I guess I learned that too many people let people influence what they like by what other people say. Just like what you like. That's kind of the whole point of wine drinking, right? You like what you like. If it's a $5 bottle of wine, great. If it's a $5,000 bottle of wine, fantastic. Hey, Mike Bonanno, what did you learn tonight?
I learned that I didn't know you were a Cars, you did the tribute band. I think that's awesome. I think that's wonderful. And Jared, You know what? I was in Canton a couple weeks ago. I should have stopped by the store, and I'm sorry I didn't.
Come see me anytime.
Next time I'm there, I'll come and visit you. I was in a kind of a hurry, and because I thought about it, but I had to get somewhere else. But next time I'm in Canton, I'll stop by and say hello.
Sounds good. I'll look forward to it.
Well, Jared, we've come to the end of ourselves, and I think we did who's here to judge us? Just us. I think we did a pretty good job, and we'll be back. Mike Stouffer will be back from assignment, and we'll do this again. So, Mike Bonanno, once again, thank you so much for being with us. We always learn so much, and the subject of these Ohio musicians was really great. Of course, as we've stated, it's close to my heart. Jared, thanks for all your great insights on wine and being my stand-in co-host tonight. You did a terrific job, and we will all see you back next Tuesday night right here for another edition of I Didn't Know That. Good night, everybody.